Hey, check 1, 2. Hey, check 1, 2. There we are. Okay. All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome back to The Pulse. So we're going to be continuing on with our development of flexibility today in the hips and adding on some strength in the upper body. And this is one of my favorite hip openers because it doesn't just require that we have flexibility of the hips, it requires that we have strength of the hips. It also requires that we have strength of the upper body. So it is a unique posture in that respect, that it requires tremendous amount of strength, but also flexibility. I remember the first time I really got this pose, I was in a class in Manhattan for the first maybe it was my first one or two classes in Manhattan that I'd ever taken. I was from Long Island at the time, so Manhattan was a little bit of an adventure to get out there and practice with other yogis in the big city. And I remember I was working on this pose, and the girl next to me had a really nice yoga mat there, and I remember like looking at it and be like, wow, this person's professional, because at the time I was just using this like crumbled up old yoga mat. And she was very helpful throughout the class, giving me little tips and pointers as I was going through my postures. And when it came to flying pigeon, she was like, oh, just move your knee a little bit higher into your armpit. And so I made that a little adjustment, and suddenly, like, boom, I was able to do it. And that experience of revelation is what the yogis would call that revelation, anugraha, as it's stated in the tantric lineage. Anugraha, that revelation where you can have just this one moment where one thing shifts, like move this here, and boom, it unfolds for us. This is what the pulse is all about, because there's the concealment. We spoke of this. I don't know if I necessarily used these terms in the beginning of this immersion, but there's the concealment, which is the everything before the revelation. So the majority of our life, it's the unfolding of everything. So when we want to do a yoga posture like flying pigeon, which we're moving towards today, the entire journey, as they would call it, right, in most spiritual books, leading up to the ability to do the posture to some degree would be the concealment phase. So if we're not able to actually perform the posture yet, that's concealment. And concealment is actually a greatest opportunity, because this is where our potential lies. I gave the example of the seed is, before it grows into a flower, the seed is in its greatest potential phase. It has the most potential to expand into something magnificent and beautiful. Once it's realized and beautiful, then the next step is to die and return back to a seed, right? So this process, this recursive experience, this ongoing or repetitive experience, is life as in the form of nature that we are. We're all nature, and everything around us is nature. So that process of highest potential and then growth, which is the longest period of time from the seed to the realization of the flower, that is the concealment phase. And it feels like concealment if our mindset is only fixed on our success is based on the revelation. If our success is based on the unfolding, the realization, the full bloom of the flower, then concealment is very challenging. It lasts forever. We're dragging our feet. We're like the little kids in the car asking, are we there yet? There's this feeling of impatience that rides over our system. And the majority of our life then feels like stress, or we don't see it as beauty. But if we switch our mindset to the recognition of our highest potential, of our greatest potential being in that concealment phase, and that the beauty, the joy, the journey, the magnificence of life is that unfolding towards that flower. It's the unfolding towards our potential, if we could see that as magnificent, as beautiful, as joyful, as an adventure, right? Could you imagine going on an adventure and being like, we're at the start of the adventure. Are we done yet? Right? So this teaching is in every spiritual path, the journey, but we take it a little bit more refined when we see things, everything in nature as either being concealed or revealed. But the path towards from concealment to revelation, if we see that as part of the revelation, then there's a certain way that we feel throughout life. But if we see that path as the concealment, which is the issue for most of us, we see the path towards revelation because we don't know that the revelation will ever come, the unfolding will ever come. We usually see that entire period leading up to the unfolding as concealment, as challenge, as hardship, as stressful, and not fun, So it's about flipping that mindset and seeing that the steps that we're taking is the success, that the journey towards the pose is the success, not the pose itself. It's the recognition that you stepped on the mat that is successful, that you decided to step into your physical body. That's the success. So you have to redefine, and this is just coming from my experience, if we redefine what success is, that success is getting into my body and activating my muscles rather than like achieving a certain yoga pose, but rather trying to activate this muscle and feel it activate. That's success. Not necessarily even activating it, but the attempt toward activation of the muscle and sensationally trying to feel into our body. That in itself is success, even if we don't have the experience of being able to sensationally feel it, but the act of moving in that direction. So I hope this is making sense, that we can redefine the way and our approach, our mindset around concealment. And then concealment can be a really enjoyable process. It can be a recognition of unfolding towards something magnificent, because we all know that when that flower blooms, that when the realization happens, that aha moment, like when she's like put the knee into the armpit, there was a wonderful feeling that rose over me, and I celebrated when we high-fived, and I was excited that that aha moment was there. But then what happened afterwards? I still had to get on the subway to go to my car, go home, and there was still a billion more yoga postures to work on. And there was still a lot more refinement within that one yoga pose that I am still doing to this day. About 12 years later, I am still working on that pose, right? It never is completely, would mean I would be dead, that nature would stop. There's always more potential. Potential, exactly that. It means that when you reach it, it's not your potential anymore. Your potential has risen. Same thing with the revelation. Okay, when it's revealed to you, that aha moment that feels so good, celebrate it, get excited, and recognize, yes, now that's beautiful. And all that means is just a marker along the way for you to continue on. And that's not to diminish the celebration and the joy that comes when that aha moment comes along, but rather to amplify the beauty of the process in itself. Okay, so along those lines is where I kind of came up with this idea of the dance, which is the next immersion, February immersion. It's the alignment, action, and engagement between the poses. So much of my life, I've studied with teachers and I have taught how to activate your muscles once you are there. The journey, the process within the single pose, the manipulation of the bones and the muscles. But what I don't necessarily focus on that often, I was starting to do it in my travels right at the end of pre-COVID time, right when that was coming to a close. I was starting to offer these workshops where I was teaching refinement of muscle activation between the poses, so that it wasn't like you get all perfect and intense and awake and present within the posture, then you'd fall asleep to move and then go to the next posture and then wake up again. So I was trying to help my student base connect this presence that we gain within the physical posture that I think is so magnificent, but also through from one posture to the next, and the movement between two static postures. This is the dance. Okay, that's what my wife always refers to as the dance. So That's why it's called the dance, the transitional movements. We're going to learn how to become more free, more graceful, more delightful in that experience of going from one pose to the next. All right, so let's get started. We've got an intense class ahead of us. Do the best you can, of course, and as always, modify as needed. I definitely recommend that you have. I've actually got some pillows I'm going to bring over, so like a couch cushion or some big pillows in front, because we are going to be doing arm balance, which means that we're going to lean forward, and we want to make sure that this precious face of yours is protected, and that we don't hit our nose, our eyes, our forehead, or anything else in between. All right, let's start today in child's pose. And actually, you know what? Let's skip the child's pose. Let's come right to the front of the yoga mat. And we're going to begin with some cat and cow, but in chair pose. I'm just checking the camera angle, making sure you're going to be able to see enough. It looks like we got a little too much floor. So I'm going to go up a little bit here. Excuse me. All right. So stepping to the front of the yoga mat. Hopefully that's appropriate. I might have to adjust it again. And let's just awaken the wrists first, because we're going to be doing some arm balances. Well, an arm balance for flying pigeon. So let's get these wrist synovial fluid moving, wrist circles. Keep going. I'm just raising a little bit here in the camera. And then take your fingers together, interlace, and then continue the wrist circles just in another way here. And we'll go from here. We're going to awaken the shoulders. Okay, so the things you've done before, we've done a lot of retraction in this program, moving the shoulder blades together. Today, we're going to be doing the opposite. It's called protraction of the scapula, and this helps us with arm balances to balance in a way that is strong, stable, and steady. So retraction creates mobility in the shoulder blades, and protraction creates more stability more often than not. So let's do this with the breath. Okay, I'm going to face you. You can face the front of your mat if you wish. You'll do inhale, round the back, shoulder blades apart from one another. That's protraction. Exhale, retract shoulder blades toward each other, which you know very well. And we'll get back to next practice. Inhale, protract, separate your shoulder blades apart. That's moving your shoulder blade away from the spinal column, okay? And then retract your shoulder blades. Let's do it with the breath. Inhale, protract your shoulder blades away from one another. Exhale, retract your shoulder blades. Okay, 2 more. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Okay, now place the hands on the thighs. Feet hip width apart, maybe a little wider. Bend your knees, move your hips back, and let's do the cat-cows to warm up the spine. Inhale, arch the back. Use your back muscles to do so. Exhale, scoop the tailbone, round your back. You can put some weight in your hands so you're not putting all the weight into your spine, okay? Inhale, arch, sit bones up, heart lifts, gaze up. Exhale, scoop the tailbone and round. Look at your belly. Inhale, tailbone goes up, hips go back, heart lifts. Exhale, scoop and round. Inhale, tailbone goes up, heart lifts, gaze goes up. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. One more time. Inhale, arch, look up. Exhale. All right, hands to hips, arch, stand up. Inhale, rise, Urdhva Hastasana. Exhale, bow, Uttanasana, forward fold. Halfway lift, inhale. Step your left foot back as you exhale. Okay, gather strength in the legs. Pull your 2 feet toward each other. Your hips will lift up a little bit as a result. Your back hip flexor is one of the focal points today. We're getting back to that. So we were activating that, the back hip flexors quite a bit in earlier practices in the pulse. And we're going to do that again today. So pull your back foot towards your front foot and press the ball mount of the back foot into the ground, as if you're trying to press the ground down and drag forward. So your back inner thigh and hip flexors activate. Take a full breath in. Full breath out. One more. Full breath in. Step forward and bow. Exhale. Halfway lift, inhale. Lean forward a little bit. Start to awaken the calf muscles. Exhale, step right foot back. And let's take a full breath in. And out. Okay, together, let's get our legs active. It's all about these 2 muscle groups: front buttocks, back hip flexors. That's what we're going to work on today. Some of you will also go beyond that and you'll work on the back buttocks as well. But for the majority of us, back hip flexors. So the way you do that is you pull your feet toward each other and press the ball mound of the back foot down. Okay, so down and towards the front foot. The front buttocks, you can micro tuck your sit bone, or even not even micro. Let's just tuck the left sit bone a little underneath and round the upper back so your fingers are barely touching the ground. See how my chest itself isn't resting on my thigh? Okay, because I'm rounding my back by pulling my front ribs in. That's an activation of the abdominals. While the buttock scoops underneath, hamstrings and glutes are activated in the front. Okay, let's step forward. Inhale. Step the left foot back as you exhale. Place the hands on the front thigh. Okay, take a moment to wag the tail so that it's straight back behind you. Mine tends to go off to the side. I know a lot of people do as well. So tailbone goes straight back. Then let's find the hip flexors of the back leg. Push the ball mount of the back foot down and drag it forward. Find the buttocks of the front leg. Press your heel down and drag it back. So as if you're trying to bring your legs together. Okay, now with that, lean forward, but pull your front rib cage in, rounding the back. And let's do some actions of the scapula. So fingertips together, shoulder blades apart. Now on the inhale, we'll draw the shoulder blades together, retract the scapula. Exhale, separate the shoulder blades, protract the scapula. Fairly easy to protract here. Inhale, retract the scapula. Exhale, protract. It's easy because gravity is helping us. Inhale. Harder to retract, right? Exhale, protract. But when we place our body weight on, it's going to be harder to protract. Inhale. Release the fingertips to the ground. While we're here, straighten through the front leg, look forward. Option to flex the foot. Press your foot down and forward a little to get your sit bone to scoop a little, and you'll get your activation of your hamstring going. Okay, and then you can bow forward to the degree that serves your hamstrings well, meaning you feel a stretch, but it's not a strain. Okay, so there's an activity I'm asking you to do in the hamstrings and glutes by pressing the heel down and forward. And that micro tuck of the sit bone should start to really activate your right buttock muscles and your hamstrings as well as you're pressing the heel forward and down and forward, okay? And those muscles, hopefully you start to feel the center of your glutes firing up, activating, getting tired, okay? Those muscles are what we're going to be stretching when we do flying pigeon pose, of course, pigeon poses as well. Okay, step forward on the inhale, halfway lift. Pause. I'd like you to stay in the halfway lift and notice the difference between your right and your left hip. Exhale it out. Should feel fairly significant since you really hyper-loaded strengthened the right side and stretched the right side and didn't do much on the left yet. Okay, so take one more breath, lift the heart. Right foot back as you exhale. Let's even it all out. Press through your front heel, hands to the front knee. All right, for a moment, wag your tail off to the left just so you can see this is what I tend to do it, and I know a lot of my students also tend to do it. So it might be you as well if your tailbone goes this way. You're gonna bring it straight back, wag the tailbone to point back. That's gonna force you to use your buttocks a little when you scoop your sit bone, left sit bone underneath, okay? Now press through your left heel until your glutes fire up. What I mean by that is sometimes I see people when I say press, I see this, a sinking, okay? This is gravity stretching your muscles. This is your muscles activating against gravity. They're strengthening. That's what I'm asking you to do right now. It's fine to do both, but what we're trying to do right now is activate our muscles against gravity. Now, push or press the ball mount of your back foot down and drag it forward to get your hip flexors active. Round your back as you pitch your body forward, and let's do those actions of the scapula. Again, it's gonna be harder to do retraction, but our focus today is protraction, so I just wanna call your attention to the movement of the scapula, not necessarily the muscles that are engaging. Okay, so first, shoulder blades apart, because this is what we'll be doing in our flying pigeon. Okay, now on the inhale, retract, shoulder blades together, not really our focus today. Exhale, protract, but you can feel the difference, can't you? Inhale, shoulder blades together. Exhale, shoulder blades apart. Just a bunch more, no big deal. Inhale. Exhale. I hope you recognize my sarcasm. Inhale. Exhale. All right, hands, fingertips to the ground. Straighten through the front leg. Option to flex the front foot, but either way, you're gonna take your left sit bone here, the base of your buttocks, gently tuck it under and press down on this diagonal of your leg, which is also, it's not just down, right? Down is this way and forward is this way. So it's a diagonal that you're pressing. You're trying to press maybe your second wind mat. If you're like me, you have a full second wind mat. You try to move it apart. Don't worry, it's very strong. It won't break. Okay, as you're pressing down and forward, then you start to feel, hopefully your glutes start to really these deep buttock muscles here are really engaged for me. And that's what I'm trying to ask you to activate. These deep glute muscles, feels like right in the center of the buttocks. Okay, there's some muscles usually just called the deep buttock muscles. There's separate ones, of course, they have individual names, but for now, we'll just call them the deep buttocks. And once those really activate, that's how you're going to develop health of those muscles there. One of those you might know is the piriformis, is a popular name. Okay, health of those muscles means that you'll be able to do postures like pigeon more easily because you'll have that kind of range of motion. Any muscle, when it's healthy, gives you more range of motion. Okay, bend the front knee. Let's step forward, halfway lift. You're going to feel that beautiful sensation of the left leg releasing some of that energy, and then bow, Uttanasana, forward fold. You could feel right now, the left side probably feels more open than the right because you just finished doing it and the left side is hot and warm. This is the importance of activation of your muscles. You can tell it's not like once your right leg's stretched out that it's going to stay stretched out. That's not how the body works. So that's why facilitated stretching, activating muscles while you're in the stretch, is so important because it actually continues to heat the muscles up and give you length. Whereas if you just warm up and then stretch afterwards, it doesn't quite have the same effect because you do lose that heat. Hands to the hips, arch the back, and rise up. Okay, so I hope I've made that clear. This is why it's important to continually heat the muscle, even though you are stretching it. So continue engaging it because you lose it. Even if you worked really hard on one side and then you do the other, you can feel it. The first side is back to being less elastic, less stretchy. It stretches more, or it feels like a stretch. All right, beautiful snow is happening outside here in Roxbury, Connecticut. Bend the knees, come to chair pose, reach the arms up. Let's warm the back muscles up. Move your knees and hips back. Groins back, keep the chest lifted, shoulders lifted, heart lifts. We take a full breath in and out. We'll stay here for 4 more and we'll just get back to that discussion. Continue your breath, please. Reminding ourselves that the majority of life can either feel like concealment because we're constantly moving towards our potential, which is constantly rising, or it can feel like a revelation that the journey of stepping onto our yoga mat, of getting our muscles active, of breathing, that's the success, that's the joy, that's the privilege of being a human, a part of nature. And bow forward, Uttanasana, forward fold. Halfway lift on the inhale. Step the left foot back as you exhale. Press down, rise, high lunge, inhale. Open up, warrior two. All right, so let's get connected to our legs. Press your feet down. Draw the feet toward each other so you feel your adductors engaged. Again, we're going to be opening up the hips today, so I want to make sure that the what I call the four quadrants of the hips, the insides, the hip flexors, or that'd be the front here, okay, the outsides, and the back. So we have four quadrants, and then those four quadrants are like compartments. And you can rotate those compartments around so you get rotation and they kind of crisscross each other. However, if you think of it as simplicity, we need to stretch the adductors and strengthen them, stretch and strengthen the hip flexors, the buttocks, the hamstrings. Okay, we get those, the outer hips, by the way, get all four active and awake, and then that range of motion that we need for pigeon and flying pigeon will start to increase. Take your arms out to the sides. Press your feet down and pull them toward each other. Let's take a full breath in. And out. Two more. Inhale. Feet press down and pull them toward each other. Exhale. One more breath. Inhale. Exhale. Okay. Inhale, reverse warrior. Exhale. Hands to the inside of your front foot. Fingertips straighten through the front leg. Same idea here. You're going to press your front heel down and forward. Start to activate the outer hips and hamstrings. It's a little bit, think of some of you, if you can't get your outer hip active, you can press diagonally towards the front right corner of your mat with your foot, and you should feel, hopefully, your outer right hip start to activate. Okay, those muscles there as you awaken them. Yes, you're probably feeling your hamstrings. If it's too much of a stretch in your adductors or hamstrings, then place your hands on blocks. It's okay to have the stretch, but I really want to target the activation of your abductors, which is the outer hips. So press your foot down, forward, and even out to the right. Down, forward, to the right, to where the front corner of your yoga mat will accomplish all three actions. Okay, that should get your outer right hip tired. Okay, now bend the front knee and bend the elbows out to the sides. Okay, let's enjoy a full breath in, full breath out. Full breath in and out. Back inner thigh lifts up. One more breath in and out. All right, walk your hands to the front here. And then what you'll do is you'll pivot into side plank on your left side, but walk your right foot halfway down the yoga mat or a little bit down so that you're on the outer edge of both feet, but then press your hips to the sky so your right buttocks that you were just engaging right here starts to stretch. So it's less about side plank and more about getting the hips up so you can feel the stretch in your right outer hip. Okay, I'm using my right foot, by the way, significantly. You can see that my left hand doesn't have a lot of weight. Okay, so I'm pressing the ground away, creating a stretch here. Okay, my knee is bent, right knee is bent, by the way. And you can play around slowly. Make sure your right knee is in a little bit of a compromised position, so you want to make sure that you don't do anything forcefully or fast. Slowly, so that you target really the stretch into the right hip. You can move, you can sway. All right, and then come on out of that. Step forward, halfway lift, and take a moment to feel that. You should feel like your right hip is a little bit, right leg is shorter, right? Exhale and bow. Kind of feels like it sucks up into the hip socket. You're gonna notice, I notice this when I really stretch my right outer hip and everything, that the right foot will start to be forward more than my left. And these second wind mats have these nice lines on them to help us with that, to see that. Otherwise, you put a piece of tape across your mat, and that's fine. And that means that your hamstrings and outer hips have awakened, so hip flexion is easier on that side. So let's balance it out. Inhale, halfway lift. And step your right foot back. High lunge, rise. Open up, Vira 2, Warrior 2. All right. I always sit my hips back so my hip flex, so my thigh bones sit better in the hip sockets, a little bit more spacious there than when you press your hips forward. Okay, sit them back. Then press your feet down and toward one another, keeping that activity in your legs of pressing down and toward each other. Then you can take your arms out to the sides and we just warm up, continuing our breath, reminding ourselves that, of course, the concealment revelation, we all want the revelation. The question is, are we willing to move through concealment in order to experience the revelation? So are we willing to accept the challenges that are required of us to rise to the level of our potential? Most of the time, the answer is no, because that's why we don't pursue the things that we really want to pursue, is because we're not willing to embrace the challenges that come with it. We just want to, hopefully just pay for something, and hopefully that creates the experience. But when you do, those times that you do embrace the challenges of the concealment phase in the process toward your potential, toward that revelation, that's when we feel most alive, most free, most joyful, because there's a recognition that we did what we wanted to do. Reverse warrior on the inhale. Exhale, hands to the ground, fingertips to the inside, straighten through the front leg. And again, you're going to press your heel down, forward, and out to the side, or just kind of think to the front diagonal of your yoga mat. And you know it, when you pursue something, when you take actions toward your goal or your intention, however you want to look at it, towards something, whether it, and by the way, a goal could just be you stepping on your mat each day. It may not be a posture, but it could be health and well-being. So a lot of times when we say goals, people get wrapped up in thinking that what I mean is, some monetary gain or some body image thing. A goal can be anything, and it's just setting your focal point towards something. So are you pressing your foot forward and down and towards the diagonally? Hopefully you feel that deep glute muscle engaging here. And in that pursuit, when we actually accept the concealment phase, which is challenges, which is often sometimes thought of as stress, we might feel impatient. Things really come our way that might stress us out or might feel incredibly out of our norm, uncomfortable, unsafe. Those kind of things, they're there for our growth. And when we embrace that, that's when we really embark on the journey toward that revelation, and the revelation comes sooner. Bend the front knee, bend the elbows, and bow. It's very obvious in the physical body. Of course, if you had a goal of getting a certain muscle strong, you would have to stress it out. You would have to put it under. You'd have to lift up more and more weight, which would actually break the muscle down. Before you get stronger, what happens is your muscle breaks down. It tears apart little pieces, micro tears throughout the whole muscle. Then it heals. When it heals itself back, it's actually stronger than it was prior. Okay, so that little thing in nature exists everywhere, that things have to be broken down in order to rebuild stronger. And that's something that us humans are reluctant oftentimes to embrace in the process of our revelation. Okay, walk the hands to the front of the yoga mat and step forward, please. Halfway lift. Exhale and bow forward. Inhale, halfway lift. Take a seat, sit onto your buttocks. All right, so I still have a tailbone thing. I'm hoping I bruised my tailbone or broke it, who knows. So that's dramatic, I was just kidding. So I may not be able to do this to my fullest extent, but you're gonna take your left ankle over your right knee, and with your hands back behind you, you are going to retract here. So just because pushing your shoulders forward when your arms are back behind could be a little compromising. So retract just a bit. And now here's the thing. First step, flex your right and left foot, flex both feet, okay? And use this as a hip stretch. Now, some of you, this is going to be already a deep stretch of the hip, and there's not going to be any further conversation after this. But what I'd like you to try to do is the key, right? That is the revelation, the attempt to movement toward, okay? And in that try, that is action. Action is doing. That is the doing. That is the success. So try to pull your right knee, that's this knee, toward your chest, and see if you can get your right heel off the ground. Bring your foot as close to your torso as possible. You will have to lean back most likely a little bit more in order for have any sort of success. You're trying to pull your right knee towards your right shoulder. So your left ankle, the one that's crossed, tries to touch your right shoulder. It won't happen. You'll probably jet your right shoulder forward to try to do so. Don't do that. Okay, and relax. All right, come up a little bit further before we go back down again. Cross your right ankle over your left knee. You might have to straighten your left leg to do so. Again, bend your left leg the best of your ability and start to flex both feet. With both feet flexed, you have an advantage here because you have your left heel on the ground, right? And that presence of the left heel on the ground is what's stretching your right hip currently. But we want to transition that so that the left hip flexors are what stretch the hip, because when you're in flying pigeon, you got to use, at least the preliminary work, you got to learn how to use your hip flexors in order to stay in flying pigeon. So you got to pull your left knee to your chest. And I'm talking about by the way, you're going to have to take your hands back further in order for this to work out, or bend your elbows as you saw I did. But really, right here, you're trying to use your left hip flexors to pull your body in a little bit of a ball, okay? So keep pulling in until your left hip flexors get, let's say, tired or shaky, okay? And then release, come on out. Now, in the fullest extent of flying pigeon, the back leg is extended, in which case you'll need to use your buttock muscles of the back leg. And to do so, I'm going to teach you one thing that we're all going to do because it's going to strengthen the hip flexors, but we're also going to strengthen the buttock muscles for those of you that are ready to move from the preliminary flying pigeon to the extended variation. And this way you have an idea of the understanding. So what you'll do is you come on all fours, and this will be beneficial for all of us. You're going to pull your left heel to your buttocks and your knee to your chest, as if you're going to step your foot forward, okay? And here, your hip flexors are really engaged and very, how do you say, tired? All you're going to do is lean your body forward, and then slowly keeping your heel towards your bum, bring the back knee up to the sky. Now you're going to feel when you do this that your chest wants to sag down into an arched position, which we don't have that privilege in flying pigeon. So you have to protract, separate your shoulder blades throughout the whole movement. So separate your shoulder blades and kick your back heel or knee to the sky until your buttocks fires up. Then straighten the leg, keeping your shoulder blades apart from one another. Straighten the back leg, bend. Now pull the knee into the chest. You're going to find it's a lot easier to round your back and protract your shoulder blades when your knee's into the chest. And that, my friends, is why this is the preliminary pose, when you have your knee into your chest and not extended behind you. Okay, you can take a relaxing moment. I'm going to show you, just in case you're not sure what I mean by preliminary pose versus the extended pose, I'll show you right now. Okay, so preliminary pose, don't do this please, just watch. Preliminary pose is going to be this knee here is hip flexors active, helping you in the pose. The extended pose, you reach back and then up. Okay, but this preliminary pose where your knee is pulling the ankle into the armpit makes all the difference, the hip flexors there. But if you want to extend the leg back, you have to learn to lean forward, because when you bring something back, to keep the weight centered, you have to lean forward, right? There's a lot of weight going back with that leg, so something has to go forward to stay in balance. Let's do the other side on all fours to get connected to this.
Again, we're all going to benefit from this hip flexor activation. I prefer flexed foot if possible. It makes it a little harder. Try to bring your knee as close to your chest as possible and separate your shoulder blades. Now, keeping your shoulder blades separate, you lean forward a little bit and start with your heel to your bum. Start to reach back behind you, lifting the knee up to the sky. Now you're going to feel that your upper body tends to sag down. Protract your shoulder blades as you lean forward and kick the leg to the sky. Okay, now keep rounding your upper back and protracting your shoulder blades as you extend the leg back behind you. Fingers active, gripping the ground. Then bring the heel towards bum, knee to chest, round shoulder blades apart, and release. Okay. I'm not really cueing the breath right here. Hopefully you're breathing steady. And even if you're in the arm balance, it's not really, well, maybe if you're masterful at it, you can do some sort of vinyasa-like movement, inhale, exhale, do this, whatever. But usually you just have to keep a steady, even breath as you're transitioning from the leg into the chest, the preliminary pose to the extended variation. All right, so next, let's get onto our back and do the arm balance upside down. Okay, so actually, before we do that, let's stretch the hips a little bit more because otherwise the arm balance in the back is a pain in the butt, literally. Take your right ankle over your left knee. And in today's variation, you could use the wall blocks below you. So this nice little example of using a ledge, using a wall, it's really nice. But what we're gonna do is take the hand to the heel. A lot of people, when I say that, they put it on the ankle. Put it on the heel and press it across. I'm going to show you from the front side. Okay, you're going to press the knee. See how my knee goes out to the side? That's going to stretch the hip a little bit more. You're going to turn your belly and chest so that your armpit comes towards the foot. And then you can stay here and bow. A lot of you, almost all of you, will benefit from having blocks. Now, what wouldn't benefit having a block is if you start bending your elbow too much and you don't have balance because you have the flexibility, but you're up here like this, okay? Then you would want to make sure your hand is on the ground. So don't be too humble. Sometimes that can get you caught up. But also, again, if a block is going to help you bend this standing knee, then why not do it, you know? Or if a block is going to keep your low back in a more arched position and stretch your hip more, then by all means, please do that, right? Like I said, last practice, if the low back is active, if you're sticking your buttocks up in this pose, it's going to stretch the hips more. But if your low back is rounded, it stretches the low back more, which is not going to help us with flying pigeon. Okay, come on up. In fact, we need the low back muscles to be strong in flying pigeon because it helps us keep our hips up. All right, let's get on to the other side here. Left ankle across the knee. Move the hips up into the left and anterior till it's funny seeing, I don't love this pink color behind us. We're going to paint it at some point. But when I see the screen, I'm like, oh yeah, there's pink behind me. Okay, hands to the ground. Nothing wrong with pink. I know a lot of people love it. Not my favorite wall color. Okay, take your right hand to your heel. Push the heel across. As you push it across, remember, you're going to try to lift your sit bones. It might be gentle lift, depending on your strength. Something I do is I kick my heel across into my hand. That starts to really activate the deep buttocks and the adductors at the same time, which is quite nice. And again, you might find it more beneficial to have hands on a chair, blocks, a wall. You're trying to keep your low back arched. And I even have to remind myself to keep my chest lifted. Because as nice as it is to kind of bow and let the nervous system relax, which is a different intention, because you don't want to be relaxed when you go into the arm balance. You want to be awake, different intention. As nice as it is, you know, we really want to focus on, for today at least, being awake in our arm balances and stretching the hip, not the back, because the back needs to be engaged in our arm balances. It will stretch, of course, but we want to target enough flexibility in the hips. Okay, come on up. All right, should feel pretty good. Let's wake up the hips a little bit more before we go into the next one. Turn toes out, bend knees, hands to the thighs, and move your groins back. Okay, we're gonna wake up the external rotators of the hip.
by pressing the heels, the outers and outer edges of your feet where your pinky toes are, press them down and try to spin the knees out until your hands are no longer needed and your knees are still, your thigh bones are still rotating back behind you. Now, when you do that, most people will start to tuck the tail and press the hips forward. Keep the hips back while externally rotating the thighs. Those are contrasting actions. They'll make it harder for you to do both actions. So externally rotating the legs will make it harder to keep the groins back. Keeping the groins back makes it harder to externally rotate the legs. Do both so you're working strength against strength. Arms out to the sides. 2 more. 1 more. Fingertips down, turn the toes in. Straight legs, inhale, lift the heart. Bow forward.
All right, walk the hands to the front. Let's step to downward facing dog for a moment, just to, before we do pigeon on our flying pigeon on our back, I think it'd be beneficial to just do pigeon pose for a moment. So take your right shin across the yoga mat. And what we're gonna do for this pigeon is get our protraction of our shoulder blades back. First, get into your flexibility. So use the back leg like a lever, move the heel back, hips go back, that stretches the front hip. Now, we're gonna get our back hip flexors and our front buttocks. Those are the main muscles of today, as I mentioned earlier, right? So the back hip flexors, how do we get them active? You press your back knee down and drag it forward, and that will lift your hips. You see that? Okay. How do you get the front buttocks active? Your outer front knee and shin press down and drag back. Okay. So the front knee and the back knee actually diagonally pull toward one another, and as a result, your hips will lift. Now, to really activate them, round your upper back, get light on your fingertips, and see if you can protract your shoulder blades, bring the fingers together with both hips off of the ground. Take a full breath in and out. Both hips up off the ground. 1 more breath in. Hands to the ground, downward facing dog. That should be a relief to come out of that pose. Okay, if you're doing it right, both hips are off the ground, then your front buttocks and back hip flexors were probably very active, getting stronger and stronger. And again, it takes a little bit of a breakdown to build it back up and get stronger. So it triggers a little bit of intensity in the mind. Left shin across the mat. And that's what I meant when I said most of us don't embrace the challenges as they come our way. We like the idea of becoming stronger, but then when it comes to the act of it, we shy away. And so the teaching of Anugraha, this idea of revelation, is the reminder that in order to have it, you must face the challenges. It doesn't just happen for us. Things don't unfold like the flower doesn't unfold with going through the intensity of being a seed, getting enough water, going through the intensity of the cold winter, okay, and then digging its roots down, surviving the spring all the way through until it becomes a full flower, okay? Same thing with us. So let's do it. The hips are back. Now pull your 2 knees toward one another. As you do so, your front shin presses down, or front knee presses down, the hips rise. The back knee pulls forward. Now, keeping that, sometimes I do too much and then I have to remind myself to stay in a little bit of flexibility, so move the hips back. Keeping that, round your back, get light in the fingers. Here we go. Are you ready? Just a few breaths, okay? Fingertips together, shoulder blades apart. Inhale. Exhale. You got this. Inhale. Exhale. We got this. 1 more breath. Inhale. Hands to the ground, down dog. All right. All right. Cross knees to the ground, cross the ankles, come to a seated position. We'll do flying pigeon on our back. I'm going to bring the camera a little bit closer and down just a bit, just so you can. Okay. The rest of this class can be a little bit lower. So here we go. Staring at the top of my head. All right. So now, flying pigeon. I'm trying to think of the best angle for you to see this. You can watch me 1 moment. If flying pigeon is very hard, or sorry, hip opening is very hard, You can place a foot on the wall, ankle to knee like so, and do a sit up and reach towards the wall. That is excellent start developing your core muscles, your protraction of your scapula, and hip flexibility. If you can do it without the wall, using your hip flexor strength, this is going to bring you closer to the arm balance. So you pull your knee into the chest and you try to get your armpit. Remember how I said she told me to bring the knee higher up in the armpit? That made all the difference. So knee higher up on the armpit. Now, even more is to get this ankle in the armpit, which most people cannot do flexibility wise. And eventually, if you can, it'll make it easier. But, you know, do the best you can to get it closer. I can't even do it from this angle personally, but you get it as close to the armpit as possible. And then you hook this foot as hard as you can. You hook it around your arm. Okay, so here you are, hook. And now you bend your elbows like you're in the arm balance. This knee is constantly pulling this ankle. So your left knee pulls your right ankle into the armpit. Okay, so if you're not trying this, get in there now and get into it. So your right ankle over left knee, use the psoas, which is a hip flexor of the left leg, to pull your right ankle into your chest. You can use your hands a little bit, okay, to kind of climb your way to get the knee into the armpit, and eventually maybe some of you can get this ankle. I can't get it in this pose. It's too, I don't have enough flexibility in my right hip. So I just do the best I can and then hook this foot around. Your elbows bent, hands to the sky as if that's where the ground is. And then you do a little sit up to use your core muscles and really feel the compactness of what flying pigeon on your back is going to be all about. Okay, and then you can release. And doing it on your back may be effortful, a lot of work, but it's certainly safer than doing it, you know, on your hands. Okay, and it teaches you all the appropriate actions without having to take a risk, or at least as much of a risk. Let's go to the other side, shall we? Cross the ankle over. Again, use the hip flexors. Predominantly, that's going to be your psoas of your right side to bring the left ankle bone into the armpit and the left knee into the armpit. Left foot really wraps around the arm, and then here you are in the preparation for this arm balance. Now, it's hard to stay in this position as it is, but to take it the next step, you really want to activate your core muscles so you can feel that compactness. So you lift your back shoulder blades off the ground, do an abdominal crunch here, okay? And you're still trying to maintain the shape. And this is your arm balance. Ekapada Galavasana, it's called, flying pigeon on the back. Okay, relax. Now, some of you are going towards the next step, which is to extend the leg. And that's going to be significantly more difficult on your back. So the hard part is going to be separating your legs, and it's way harder to do the full pose than it is to do this on the back. So you either repeat what you just did, or you might start to take the leg away from. Okay, so let's get right ankle over left knee, bring it in tight, clamp this foot, the right foot around the elbow as much as you can, really clamp it on there, and then slowly take the left leg away, keeping it bent to start. Do a sit up and extend the leg, flexed foot, okay? Bring it in and release. Now, if that, you know, if your foot kept slipping here, then it's definitely going to slip when you're in the full pose. So you really got to clamp the foot as strong as you can around the arm, and it's got to be strong enough that it stays in tight, which is a little bit hard to explain in a short period of time. But essentially, what's the best way I can say this? Okay, so you come in here, you hook the foot, and then you try to rotate the thigh bone while it's on the arm. And the way you do that is you press your knee into the armpit, and the thigh will externally rotate, keeping it closer into your chest. Okay, it's hard to explain why that works, but it does. So when you're in the full arm balance, you'll be pressing your knee down into your armpit. It's a lot easier than when you're in this on your back version. So let's get compact. Flex your foot around. and then just kind of press your knee out a little bit to the side and into your arm as you slowly do a sit-up, by the way. Extend. Woo. And release if you didn't, sorry, I was focusing on making it happen in my body. Breathe. After those, sometimes the front of the neck overstretches overstrengthens quite a bit, and we do a lot of that in our daily life. So sometimes just doing a little bit of a stretch of the neck or just pressing your head back into the ground too can be nice. So just to stretch the neck, you just turn your head one side or the next. Don't try to crack it or anything. I'm not trying to crack my neck. I'm just turning it to the side and then letting that be the stretch of the opposite side here. Or you can do just pressing your head straight back and looking back behind you can be enough to release the back muscles will engage, so the front muscles will disengage. All right, so let's do this. Let's roll. Let's get into the pose. Fingers grip the ground. Those of you that were in the handstand training, you totally get that by now. Sorry, I realized my head was chopped off there. Okay, so here we go. We're gonna come into a chair pose with right ankle over knee. And you're gonna try to get your right knee as close in the armpit as possible. And the left and the right ankle as close in the armpit as possible. So I usually go ankle first, clamp, then knee. Okay, so I go ankle, clamp, knee. Once I have that, and you might just be watching or you might be doing it at the same time, so whatever works for you, you can always pause and rewind. Then you have to lean forward. So you walk your hands forward on a diagonal. You see this diagonal of the arms? Then, keeping the knee in the armpit, lean forward till you grip your fingers into the ground. Now, most people would start to sink here, and that's where it goes wrong. Instead, press your shin and knee down into the armpit, and then you'll feel that your body rises up. So you press your shin and knee, just like pigeon pose, down into the armpit, just like we did in our lunge pose. You press down using your glute muscles, and your body will rise up. Sorry, I keep cutting my head off. Maybe I put it too far down. Anyway, it's better for this, I'm sure. Okay, so once you get here, go ankle, knee into the armpit, walk tippy-toe, hands forward, lean, grip with the fingers. Now, here's the key. Press your right knee down and your left knee squeezes in. Those two actions, right shin down, left knee in. Hip flexors of the back leg, buttocks of the front leg, okay? Those are the actions. I'll give you a little moment to try that and play around. And then we'll switch it up and go to the left side in a second. Give you a little moment. The snow outside is beautiful right now, outside the window. Okay, second side. And I'll say the same things again. Sometimes it takes the 10, 20, 30, 100, 2,000 times of hearing the same thing until it actually registers into the brain and into the body. Somebody says something 10,000 times the last time, you're like, oh, that's what you meant. Okay, so I say the ankle first usually, then clamp, flex the foot, then knee. Okay, that's just the preliminary setup. And then part of that preliminary setup is leaning forward, so walking your fingers forward. Then you can't just get into the arm balance here. You have to lean your body forward. You see how my elbows are back right now? But as I lean forward into my fingers and grip the ground, now I'm in a position to arm balance. So the two leg actions, press the front shin down, pull the bottom knee in to my chest. And that's where the arm balance happens. Okay? So that's the preliminary pose. You can play around with that. I'm going to show while you're playing around, some of you are ready for the next step. And this is where it's really important to have something ready in front of your face. Although both, should be doing it now anyway. I usually put the cushion on the yoga mat itself so that it doesn't slide if I fall onto it. I don't suggest trying to fall ever, but prepare for the worst. of course, but do your best not to go there. Okay, so ankle, knee, very important that you clamp this foot, lean forward, same idea. Then just like we did on all fours now, your knee goes back and up. Then you can extend the leg. Now, it's probably a really good idea for you to watch that demonstration over and over again to see that my weight, if you compare yourself, and in fact, I'd love for you to post either the preparatory pose, what I call the preliminary pose of the knee tucking into the chest, and the extended variation that I just showed you. If you're doing the extended, definitely post that in the Facebook group so I can watch. And if you're doing the preliminary pose and struggling to kind of get the balance, post that in the Facebook group so I can give you some support, what tips you can do to get into the pose. It's one thing to attempt it one time. It's another thing to attempt it, try to video yourself, watch yourself, post it. Let me see it. Let me support you, give you the tips that you need. Throw it up in the Facebook group. Now that we have internet here at our home, it's a lot easier for me to get involved and connect with you all. Okay, so let's do that. Now I'm going to show on the other side just so you have another angle to see. When the important point I was going to try to make is that when your knee goes back, your body weight shifts forward. Most of you will see if you video yourself, if your knee goes back, your elbows will start to fall back and your body will fall more often than not back onto your feet. So here we go. Ankle around the arm, knee into the armpit, lean forward, grip the ground, press the front shin down, pull the back knee in and up, slowly lean forward as the back knee goes back and up. Okay. And yeah, and the back, it's the back hamstrings and buttocks that keep the leg lifted once it's extended. So they're opposing muscles. To do the preliminary pose, it's hip flexors of the back leg. To do the extended pose, it's hamstrings and buttocks of the back leg, opposing actions. Okay, so that's good for us today. It's a full practice, huh? Oops, sorry, I just hit the camera. Let's cool down the nervous system a little with just a simple Paschimottanasana. Both legs out in front, move the sit bones back. I suggest feet wide and bow forward. I made a few stomps on the ground just now, and my dog thinks there's somebody here, so he's barking downstairs. You probably can't hear him, hopefully not. Now, as you take this Paschimottanasana forward fold, bring your energy downward, relax it towards the ground. All right, coming on up. Take Shavasana. I always do head towards the front of the mat for Shavasana, so spin around if that's the case for you. Any variation of Shavasana, your arms or legs as you please. Any last necessary movements to help you settle in.
back to your breath. Waking the fingers and the toes. Stretch the arms. Roll to your side. Come up to a seated position as you're ready. Take a moment of gratitude for this body, this practice, this journey, adventure that we are on constantly towards our potential. And even in the realization of that potential, that our potential itself rises and expands even further. So the mindset we attempt to cultivate is one of enjoyment of this journey, one of enjoyment of the concealment, recognizing that it is leading us to the revelations, to those peaks where we have the celebration and the joy, but can we find that same joy and celebration when the so-called achievement has not yet occurred? And the way we do that is by focusing on the beauty and the magnificence of being a human as part of nature, and the privilege of facing challenges, just like the muscle faces the challenge to break down in order to rebuild, so do we. Thank you all so much. Namaste. Hope that you've enjoyed this practice. It's been a pleasure to share with you. The dance is coming up February, and this is the focusing on the muscle engagements between the postures. We'll still be doing alignment within the postures and techniques to develop flexibility and strength, just like this immersion, but we'll add a little bit of an added flair to the transitional element and making sure that we are learning how to become more graceful and more fluid in our movements, more free to move in a way that is connected. It is intertwined with our presence. Okay, so let's get present. See you in, we have 2 more left in this one, I believe. Yeah. We'll get back to backbending next class, I'm pretty certain, is the goal. Okay, see you soon. And yeah, hope you sign up for February. Also, I am taking last calls for the 200-hour begins February 1st. So if you're interested in that, please send me a direct message, email me. Let's set up a time to talk because February 1st is just around the corner. So let's set up a time to talk this week if you're watching this live. Okay, lots of love, everyone. Take care.